Paranormies Radio for the Seeker.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for stopping by today. I hope you're having a pleasant day wherever you are. We are enjoying summer. July is one of my favorite months. I just hope it doesn't go by too quickly. Already we're more than half into 2015. It's just going way too quick, if you ask me. Our guest today is Tim Murdoch from whiterabbitradio.net. He does his own radio show, and he's also behind some very well-produced and funny animations that show hypocrisy and double standards and really crystallizes what is going on by flipping the roles of the players involved, or by taking well-known concepts and putting them in a different setting. Johnny Racist, Anti-Racist Hitler, and How Whites Took Over America are a few of them, and do take a look if you haven't seen them yet. Hilarious, and it becomes clear as to what really is happening when you see some of these short films. We are going to talk about one of the most obvious and insidious plans today, yet one of the most denied, and one that a majority of people still are pretending isn't happening, or that the effects of this isn't really happening. And when you do bring attention to it, well, then it turns out that you are the problem, and the problem itself isn't really a problem. We'll bring attention to why diversity is a lie and who is pushing it. Welcome back, Tim. Thank you so much for coming back again. It's good to speak with you again. I hope you're doing well today. It certainly isn't a lack of issues to talk about and to go through, isn't there?
Well, it's great to be back on Red Eyes Creations, and I've never seen so much stuff going on at once, all at the same time. It's really insane in the planet. Yeah,
I mean, I had a kind of an issue that I wanted to go into, and some of the things I wanted to talk about, and then when we spoke earlier, and then in that time, so many things have just happened, from what's happening in the U.S. right now with the Charleston church shooting, and of course how the elite are pushing one thing in America, and then you have everything that's happening over in the European Union as well. It's just so much. But let's begin to talk about the concept of diversity before we get to some of these other topics, and you can tell us a little bit about some of the things that you wanted to get into right here in the beginning, Tim.
Well, diversity is a fascinating term because most people are just now becoming aware of how ominous it is, how nefarious it is. It's a word for white people that operates not only in the present tense, but the past tense. For instance, if we were to say, this corporation needs more diversity, all the listeners immediately know that there's too many white people there. And if I were to say, on the past tense, this school system, this grade school in Malmö, Sweden, is very diverse, everyone listening knows there's very few white kids left. So diversity coming in always means too many white people. You know, diversity going out means there's very few of you going to be around. And so that's why we're hearing terms like diversity as a code word for white genocide. Diversity means chasing down the last white person. And it comes down to this concept of white genocide. I mean, diversity is an ominous phrase.
It sure is, exactly. I mean, that's everyone kind of, well, no one says it out open though. Well, some do, but I mean, if we talk about people in the official world, they never discuss this quite openly in that way, but everyone knows what it means. They're kind of, I guess they're running from the term itself, and they just refuse to discuss what it really means, right?
Well, everyone says, you know, this is why we're trying to move the discussion through a set of little more aggressive memes than usual. They'll dance around diversity and multiculturalism all day long, but the fact of the matter is it's only whites that are supposed to accept this diversity. I mean, if I were to walk around Tokyo and say, you know what, there's too many Japanese here, we need more diversity, I have a feeling they're going to get a little offended by that. If I were to do that decade after decade, to the extent that Japan's becoming non-Japanese and non-Asian, I have a feeling there's going to be a big reaction eventually. Someone's going to figure out that diversity is ominous. That this is some type of in this case, we're dealing with some type of an anti-white genocidal spin. There can be no doubt about it. You know, and it comes down to, there's a lot of questions right now about the legal definition of genocide. And the definitions themselves go back to, of course, the Article 2 in 1948 and Article 3. And genocide itself has always been interpreted very wide for a particular reason. You know, the response that someone like me always gets is, well, there's nothing violent going on, or genocide has to be violent. Well, genocide has nothing to do at all with violence necessarily. You know, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. As such, killing members of the group A. B. Causing serious bodily, mental harm to the members of the group. C. Deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. D. Imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. E. Forcibly transferring children to another group. And then, of course, Article 3 goes into genocide, conspiracy to commit genocide, direct public incitement to commit genocide, attempt to commit genocide, complicity in genocide. It's very broad, and it's broad for a particular reason. If we were to, Henrik, sterilize a group of people using modern social engineering techniques, put something in their food or inject it, it wouldn't be violent. It would be harmless as far as physically at first. But it wouldn't be no less genocide. So they very wide berth on this. And this is the open interpretation. The standard interpretation is Raphael Lemkin, and this was reinterpreted by a very famous English-speaking world elite in the 80s. And Raphael Lemkin said, genocide does not necessarily mean the immediate destruction of a nation. It is intended to signify a coordinated plan of different actions aiming at the destruction of essential foundations of life and national groups with the aim of annihilating the groups themselves. The objectives of such a plan would be the disintegration of the political and social institutions, of culture, language, national feelings, religion, and the economic existence of national groups, and the destruction of personal security, liberty, health, dignity, and even the lives of the individuals belonging to such groups. It's extremely broad and certainly applicable. One of the more interesting, I shouldn't say funny, it's a tragic kind of funny, is Prime Minister of Australia, Fraser. He was Prime Minister of Australia from 1975 to 1983. And he said genocide involves the attempt to achieve the disappearance of a group by whatever means. It does not have to be violent. It could be a combination of policies that would lead to a certain group dying out. So again, he's reiterating, Lemkin, he's reiterating these broad standards, which is very common for the Western elite to say one thing and do another. But what's interesting about Australia is the foreign minister in 1983, just shortly thereafter. His name is Bill Hayden. He told Asia Week this. This is an exact quote. These are heads of state. This is what they're saying. This is what they're doing. Okay, he said there's already a large and growing Asian population in Australia. Now, if you look at the Asian population in Australia in 1983, it's not all that large. Right. It's been large in a couple different areas. It's by and large this giant white country. There's already a large and growing Asian population in Australia. And it is inevitable, in my view, that Australia would become a Eurasian country over the next century or two. Yeah. Australian Asians and Europeans will marry one another, and a new race will emerge. I happen to think this is desirable. We should welcome the process of gradually becoming a Eurasian type of society. Hayden continued, we will not just become a multicultural society, which seems to me some sort of soft terminology anyways. We will become a Eurasian society, and we will be better for it. Now, that's a fascinating statement, because first off, he's not asking the Asians' approval, is he?
Right.
So much for caring about the people of color. Second, it goes against the previous, it goes against the prime minister, really right nearly the same time. Genocide involves an attempt to achieve a disappearance of a group. Well, he's attempting to create a whole new group without their permission, without a vote. And he goes on to say, in 1984, ex-Prime Minister Bob Hawke says this, we will not allow, this is Australia again, 1 year later, we will not allow to become a political issue in this country the question of Asianization. In other words, you Asians and you whites, you're not going to vote on this. We don't care. We're here to create this new world. We're going to wipe out our founding population. Notice how he's not even talking about Aborigines.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
They're just using that to guilt trip them.
Yeah.
And this all-white Australia policy, no. This is the world we're building. And so if you're listening to Red Ice right now, and if you're non-white and you're in Western civilization, wherever you're stationed is really dependent on what you're going to be mixed with based on our wonderful genocidal elites.
Yeah, that's right.
And there's not any debate over this. Now, this isn't just one quote, Henry. There's a series of this. Separated. What I'm going to do is give a couple more quotes, separated by at least a decade. So there can be no argument. This is also not in an isolated event. These are quotes from heads of state. There's also another phenomenon that many have witnessed, open borders without voting. If you vote, like in California in the mid-90s, they throw the vote out the window. It doesn't matter if you're black or Asian and voting. You get your vote thrown out the window right with the whites. They're creating this world. They don't care what you say or think.
Yeah.
And their standard of genocide is one thing. What they say and what they do is a whole nother thing. And what we're doing, of course, is pointing out this ridiculous standard that goes right to the heart of the matter. This ridiculous double standard. And of course, the next quote is far more interesting because this comes at a time, and it may have bearing on what's going on with ISIS even to this day, these radical Al-Qaedas and whatnot. You had an episode in, of course, in Europe, Serbia, and Serbia, of course, got into it with Muslims. And Wesley Clark, U.S. General, ex-NATO Supreme Commander, talking about the NATO bombing of Serbia in 1999. And he said, let's not forget what the origin of the problem is. There is no place in modern Europe for ethnically pure states. That's a 19th century idea, and we are trying to transition into the 21st century, and we're going to do it with multi-ethnic states. Now, he's not saying this to China. He's not saying this to Japan. He never has. He's not saying this to Arabs, because Saudi Arabia is a xenophobic Arab state. There can be no doubt about that. He's not saying this to the Guatemalans or the Mexicans. He's saying it to basically, he's declaring war on white children in Europe.
Yep.
And he's doing this as he proceeds to bomb Serbia in submission as they try to fight in a conflict basically with Muslims. That's what's really going on here. And I'm oversimplifying the conflict, I realize that, but in context of hindsight, vision's not only 20/20, it also lends itself to the truth.